to the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. Brian, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm not bad. Not bad.
It's not as cold as it was last week.
No, it's about 20 degrees warmer Celsius. Yeah, it's a lot better, a lot more pleasant day in the bomb shelter.
Getting a bit more range out of your electric car.
Oh, range, heat, everything. Yes.
Okay, let's take a look at the news. So Electrek is reporting, this story is a couple of weeks old, but I thought it was interesting. New York City is offering bounties to report people who are leaving their cars idling. So there's an app you can get, and you can report people if they've left their car idling, which is against the law in New York City, and you can make money off of it. You can make money through the app by narking on people.
Do you know how much money? Per violation?
$80? I don't know. I have no idea.
So that seems like something somebody could do and would do based on, the different things you can do in New York City to try and make a buck just on a cold day to sit around in Manhattan. And
it's the gig economy. It's rather than driving an Uber, you can go out and, snitch on people.
Oh, that's ugly. Kind of an ugly way of doing things.
Yeah, but I've always disliked, it's always bothered me, like when cars are idling. It's illegal in some places, not illegal in other places. I think here we don't have a bylaw about it because it does get to be minus 40, so sometimes there is an excuse to leave your car running. But I see it all the time when the temperature is fine, and people shouldn't be doing it.
Everybody here has a car starter, like an electric
remote starter, yeah.
It seems to be a standard option that people go for when it's such a cold climate here. And then they abuse it. Of course, it turns off after 15 minutes, supposedly.
Yeah, ours turns off after 10 minutes. But then the problem is, as we sort of discussed before, like we own small cars with small efficient engines. So you leave it running for 10 minutes, it really doesn't warm up.
It does nothing in minus 30. Nothing.
Yeah. And you can't, at least in our car, you can't leave the heated seats on.
Oh.
So I have sometimes gone out, turned the heated seats on, because that's the thing that does actually warm up quickly.
Right.
Leaving it running, it warms up the steering wheel because you can leave that switch on.
Okay, well, that's nice.
And it warms up the engine a bit, but the cabin's still, not real warm.
And that's where your Model 3 will solve everything.
Yeah, so I've ordered a Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus. They've told me it's 3 to 6 weeks away for delivery.
Now, what I'm wondering, and this is my story this week, I like to have stories that... you have interesting, quirky stories. My stories are what's moving the needle forward to 2030, which is when this podcast ends, by the way. So
welcome to Story Time with James.
This is my big deal, is that I think the biggest story of the week is that the Model Y is being produced, that it's in the hands. The people are now getting notifications that they can accept delivery in a few weeks. So it's hitting the streets, it's in the wild all over the place. I saw the trunk room. Did you see the trunk room?
It's huge.
It's massive. You could put several bodies in there.
Yeah.
The one thing that I do like about my 2013 Leaf compared to the S is that, and I'm a large man in every way, not every way, but every way, and I couldn't get in to the Model Y. My head got stuck, and they had to drive with my head sticking out.
Into what?
Into the Model 3.
Oh, yeah.
The Model 3 is basically a sedan. It's low profile. It's sporty.
A bit hard to get in.
A bit hard to, especially if you're an old, out-of-shape person like myself. However, the Nissan Leaf rides higher than our Prius, and I like that. And it's not a crossover SUV, but it's got a profile that is very appealing. And I was against SUVs, but the form factor, everybody, and not even in just the United States, the whole world is going for crossover SUVs, this form factor. So I can see why this would sell like bloody hotcakes. Like if the Model 3 is going crazy, this is going to go nuts.
Right. And the Tesla Model Y, it was announced basically exactly 1 year ago. They presented the demo model.
Yeah.
And 1 year later, they're now starting to deliver them, which is very, very fast.
Now, are you concerned? There's been rumors going around that the Model 3 production has been put on hold or delayed because of the launch of the Y?
I don't know, but it is surprising how long it's taking. Like I put my deposit down on my car in very early December, and now it's going to be, well into March.
Well, that's the Model Y, friend.
So I assume, that could have something to do with it. But And also, too, we live in a weird remote place, so I'm assuming our delivery times here are probably longer than in other places.
Right.
But still, I was surprised.
So they have to come to Canada and get Canadianized. They have to have daytime running lights.
Well, I assume they do that all at the factory, but it's a different spec probably.
They don't with Toyotas.
Is that right?
Yeah, they come over on a ship to Vancouver and get Canadianized there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
Neither did I.
Well, that's probably for Tesla. That's probably a software thing, though, right? Like it's.
I would hope so. It would certainly make it economical. In fact, if they were smart, they should have it as because daytime running lights are proven to work.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're talking about having rear daytime lights too, but that's only because people forget to turn on their front lights.
So they still don't have daytime running lights in the U.S.?
No, I don't think they do.
Oh, wow.
In fact, my car had to have them installed, and the thing that the box that made them work broke. It wasn't a high quality box, so I have to turn my lights on in the daytime so I don't get a ticket. But yeah, that's the daytime running lights have been proven quite solidly, even before they were law in Canada many decades ago, to improve. And there was an interesting place. I was driving. I don't know what state it was in. It was towards Arizona, and it was through this rocky sort of pass area. And there was nothing particularly weird about it, but there must have been a lot of accidents there because they said turn on your lights in the daytime. And we've encountered a few highways like that where they said that. And I don't know what the story is, but I assume there's a lot of collisions and it helps, or maybe there's dust storms or something. I don't know. Well,
I do remember before daytime running lights became mandatory, people were starting to do it anyway, like just turning their lights on in the daytime. But,
and in the highway, it helps if you're, like I would always drive with lights on the highway because, they want to be seen. And I notice, I drive a black car, and I know if I forget to turn my lights on, I actually notice people sort of not noticing me to the last second, and it's kind of scary sometimes. So I don't think I'm imagining this. I think it actually makes a difference. So when my kids drive the car, I tell them to make sure those lights are on. What else you got?
Like the regular lights rather than just the daytime lights?
Yeah, because I don't have the daytime lights.
You don't?
No, that's what I was saying. Mine's an American car that was imported into Canada.
Okay.
They added an aftermarket box, and that box has failed.
Oh, I get it. Okay, I didn't understand.
It worked for about a week.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, on to a different topic. This eventually will relate to clean energy.
Okay.
But off the top, it doesn't really, and that's Radon Gas.
Okay.
Let's talk about Radon Gas.
Now, is that a different gas than I have on Taco Tuesday?
Absolutely. So,
are you sure?
Radon gas is odorless, colorless gas that is prevalent
in basement bomb shelters?
In basement bomb shelters. All over North America, really, but it's worse in some areas, including where we live. So,
do you know why?
No, I don't. I mean, it has to do with stuff decomposing under the ground.
Oh, dear. Yes, I have that. I have a big problem with that.
Yeah. So, in our part of the world, you really should get your house tested for radon gas. You can usually test in the basement. And if your level is above 200, and that's parts per million or billion, I'm not sure, but 200 is the government standard.
Oh.
And you want to be below 200. So I have a radon meter in front of us. What is it reading, James?
It's reading 203.
Oh my God.
You son of a bitch. What the hell are you doing to us? We're in your basement bomb shelter.
I'm killing you slowly.
Recording a podcast, and I'm getting irradiated by radon gas.
Okay, well, let me explain. This room has no ventilation.
I know.
That's the problem. So it is a fallout shelter. There's a couple of holes in the wall. And
this is ironic. It's a fallout shelter with its own radiation source.
Yeah, it's a real problem. But anyway, I had it tested in this house a couple of years ago by a professional, and it was reading about 250 in the main part of the basement. So
the theater?
Yeah, the home theater area. So that's considered high, and it's like, yeah, you should do something about it, but it's not urgent. Like if your numbers are 1,000 or 2,000, then it's urgent and you should really do something. So what we ended up doing was putting in a heat recovery ventilator in the house, which is basically a fan.
Why haven't I had a tour of this?
Oh, I'm going to have to show you afterwards. But it's just a fan that runs 24 hours a day. You can adjust the level of it, and you can adjust how much Fresh air comes in. So what we have it on mostly is fresh air comes in for 20 minutes, and then for 40 minutes it recirculates the air. And then it switches for 20 minutes, it brings in fresh air and so on. And it goes through a heat exchanger. So when it's minus 40 out, which it frequently is.
It's not.
But you do bring in, more cold air into the house than you would like. But it goes through a heat exchanger, so it warms up the air as much as possible.
Do you know what the rate of exchange is?
No, I don't.
What do you guess it? Like 60%? 70%?
At one time I knew this, and they would have talked about it when they installed the system, but...
Okay. Who did you get? Like a furnace person, or what kind of person?
Yeah, a local heating and cooling place. I'd been to the home show in Regina and talked to various people, and there was one company that seemed to know the most about heat recovery ventilators, so I went with them.
Okay. What else do you have to say about it?
So... well, it's really improved the air quality in the house. Like, the house would get kind of sort of stuffy and stale sometimes, particularly in the basement. Also, the bedrooms upstairs didn't have any air returns to the furnace because the house was built in 62.
Well, mine doesn't in 79.
Is that right? Yeah, so...
In fact, I'd only learned about them when a friend of mine bought a brand new house. I didn't think they happened until just recently.
Yeah, so now, of course, when they're building a new house, there's an air return for the furnace in every room.
That's crazy.
But yeah, in the early 60s or 70s, they wouldn't have done that. So yeah, the air quality in the bedrooms was never great. Like if you had the doors closed, you get hot air coming in from the furnace, but with no exchange of air.
Right.
It gets stuffy and leads to problems, and leads to cold bedrooms as well. Like the bedrooms were.
Do you leave
colder.
your furnace fan running, like a DC furnace fan?
No, I tried to do that, but it was only it's a long story, but there was only 2 wires going to the thermostat.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't able to communicate properly to leave the fan on.
Okay.
So then we put in the heat recovery ventilator, and it runs 24/7. So
it does.
Yep. So that has the house just feels better, and the air feels fresher. And it brings the radon level to around 100 typically. But of course, here in the bomb shelter, there is no proper ventilation. So I figured it would be a little bit high in here.
It could be me. I've had a rod installed in a personal place, and it may be radioactive. I don't know.
Yes.
203. It's gone down to 2 points, hasn't it?
Yeah, but also like the 1-day average is only 94, so it does fluctuate.
Well, that's the 1-day average. See, I brought it up.
And that's the long-term average is 203.
How much did that device cost?
It was like $220. It was quite a lot.
Does it work though? That seems like actually a good price for something that's so complex.
Yeah, I believe it works. We've now tested about 4 houses with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
how long does it take to test?
Well, the first reading happens in like 6 hours or so. Like you just reset it, leave it in the same place, and you get the first reading in about 6 hours. And then you just, you should leave it for a few weeks to kind of get a long-term kind of thing. So I've loaned it to a couple of people.
And how did that go?
One house that I loaned it to, super low readings, like down in the 40s.
And what kind of house was it?
An old bungalow, like built quite a long time ago. And then they loaned it to somebody else, and the numbers were like closer to 2,000. So they're now.
Oh, yeah.
So it's great that they were able to borrow it and find out, and now they're.
How long were those people at that house?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but they're now getting a professional to have a look at it.
So you've checked the Canadian Cancer Society. Like where were you getting guidance on this?
Yeah, is it the Lung Association? I can't remember.
Lung Association, probably.
The Saskatchewan Research Council, you can get a kit from them to do the initial testing, and that's what I did.
What kind of kit was it?
It's this little plastic vial, and you just take the cap off and you leave it somewhere for 3 months.
Right.
And then you put it in an envelope and you mail it to them.
Was it free?
No, it was like $40.
Yeah, they can sell those at Home Depot.
Oh, is that right?
I was planning on doing that.
Yeah.
Because our problem is that we have the windows open, like even in the winter.
Right.
Because on sunny days, but that's a good thing. But I have to make sure the windows are closed and everything's sealed.
But yeah, so I want to loan you the radon meter so you can test your house.
We'll have our results next week.
Yeah.
Talk about a tantalizing advertisement for next week's show.
Fantastic.
What will happen? Will James be radioactive?
So I do want to talk about your house because you have a unique, original, energy-efficient house, and that's why this conversation gets around to clean energy. But your house is a passive solar house that was built in 79, right? Mm-hmm. And it was based on a design for the Saskatchewan Conservation House, which was one of the first kind of passive house designs built here in the 70s in Saskatchewan. And if you want to Google Saskatchewan Conservation House, you can learn more about it. But
This is a heat recovery thing, isn't it?
in terms of what?
They invented it.
Oh, for
the
the
Saskatchewan
Conservation House?
invented heat recovery
I
right
didn't
here
I
in
didn't
this
even know that.
butthole, beautiful province with radon gas.
So, yeah, apparently that project, the Saskatchewan Conservation House, is basically what led to the passive house standard that now exists around the world.
Which is incredible, considering I don't know how that happened. I guess it was the oil crisis in the 70s that led to it, isn't it? It was
exactly.
We've got to stop burning fuel and we're not going to get it. Yeah, that's what it was. And then that went away and so did everything else.
And we live in a cold climate, so it's like, okay, well, we burn a lot of fuel to heat our homes. What's a way that we can deal with this, especially if the price of oil is going to go up? But yeah, like you say, the price of oil came back down again and everyone sort of forgot about it. But there were several houses built based on that design, and you now own one of them.
Yes, and mine was 79. When was that one built? Like 1 or 2 years earlier?
Yeah, a couple of years earlier.
It was trying to replicate that on a budget, I think. And I think
so yours is not as elaborate, maybe.
My neighbor tells me that it was built without a furnace. And by the way, I wouldn't call it a passive solar house by today's standards. I would call it sun-tempered because it is not technically a passive solar house. It has no way of, there's no cement floor. It's built on a crawl space. It has no way of retaining the heat. Although on the coldest days, like even the coldest days we've had in the 10 years we've lived there, 11 years, on a sunny day, even with ice crystals in the air, that it's, the air freezes, it's still, you don't turn on the furnace after 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
It will just heat itself. And I have to say, for people out there, we live in a place that has short days, right?
Yeah. In the winter.
It's a very cheerful place to live because even if it is minus 40, and I do a lot of work in my bedroom on the computer, and that's my office as well, it's got massive south-facing windows. That is a great aesthetic because, and don't worry about the summer because if you have the overhang, and we don't even have the overhang, and we don't have problems, but if you have an overhang, it blocks, the angle of the sun is different. It can be perfectly designed to be blocked. It's a very simple thing. And even my mother's house, which was very old and faced south, heated up in the wintertime a little bit. But this city runs north-south. When I went looking for a house, there was very few that went east-west, and I could find one. But anyway, it's cheerful. You can bathe. The sun comes through at a low angle and bathes the whole stinking room.
It's
you
amazing.
feel like you're on a beach. Yeah. And like I said, in the wintertime, I will open that window in the bedroom, just a crack or a little bit, and get fresh air and sunshine. And it is, if you have seasonal affective disorder or whatever it is called properly, I highly recommend it. And I think all places should be designed. It's a simple solution, just to design your city in an east-west fashion.
Yeah, and I'm very lucky. Our house has good southern exposure, so it's not a passive solar house, but everybody gets the benefit of the sun, whether you kind of want it or not.
Right.
But we have a dining room with a huge sliding glass door. Mm-hmm. So in the summer, the sun's nice and high, so it doesn't beat in and it doesn't...
It bounces off. Yeah. Basically, it hits at such an angle that it just bounces off.
But then in the winter, so there's particularly like 2 weeks out of each year when the sun is kind of at its lowest point, and it blasts into our dining room like a blast furnace. Yeah. And when we put in the sliding glass doors, we had to decide, well, are we going to put curtains or blinds in here? Yeah. And well, it's not a bedroom, so we don't really need it. We like the cleaner look, so we decided not to put up any blinds. But it's only a problem about 2 weeks out of the year in the middle of the winter when we'll sit and have lunch in the dining room and we're all just getting fried from the sun. So we literally wear sun hats for about 2 weeks while we eat lunch and the sun is blasting us there in the dining room.
That's hilarious. We have the same issues. I did install blinds after many years, and I did, what else did I do? I put on like a temporary paper blind. I stretched it out over the top of my bedroom window just so I wouldn't get blasted by the sun. Yeah. It actually goes below that until now, this time of the year in February. Right. So it gets quite strong. And with solar panels on your roof, you can actually see the progression of the sun, which is a connection to nature. You know what I did? This is quirky and fun. I have Alexas in my home, Amazon smart speakers, and I have it to announce sunset. It just says sunset when the sun goes down.
Yeah.
And And it's like, oh, yeah, we're indoors all winter, and okay, the sun's going down now. I guess it's, it was 2 minutes later than it was yesterday, and I just feel more connected because we tend to, and that you shouldn't do this, but people just go and stay inside their homes, right?
And our house, I believe, stays cooler in the summer because instead of the sun beating directly on the roof of our house and heating up the house, it's beating on the solar panels that we have.
Yes.
So they're absorbing the heat, turning it into energy, and they're not directly mounted to the roof. There's a bit of a gap there.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's an air gap. Yeah.
So I think having solar panels in a hot, sunny climate will keep your house a little bit cooler,
and it'll make your shingles last longer, assumably too. So
hopefully, yeah.
We're hoping.
So in terms of the design of your house, there's no basement, I know you've told me.
There's a crawl space.
There's a crawl space, sort of a dirt crawl space under the house.
There was no furnace installed, and what there was they had this massive attic, which is almost like a whole story to itself. In fact, it is a story on one side of the house.
Story time with James.
It's got an odd roof. It kind of looks like an old grain elevator in a way. And so that story of the attic is really tall. And you can, well, what did they do? They had like when we had the solar panels put on the house, the installer had to get plans from the city. So those city plans actually solved a few of the mysteries. And what it was, my neighbor, who's been there since the beginning, but he doesn't really know anything, said there were solar panels on the side of the house. But this was 1979, so a PV solar panel did exist, but it would have cost $1 million and spit out about 3 watts.
Yeah.
Not literally, but something like that. So this was an actual air heating solar, which hasn't really taken off, but they do exist.
Yeah.
Black panels that heat air, and then you exchange that with some sort of. I have a furnace duct that goes through my attic for that reason.
Right.
And it is really, really bizarre, and there's all kinds of electronic dampers. I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And but apparently it didn't work, and apparently they didn't save a lot of money.
Well, and because, like we've said, the south-facing building with the big windows, that really heats your house, But
this is not super, super insulated. It's got like 8, 9-inch, 10-inch walls or something. It's got double 2x4 construction and then styrofoam on top of that and 2 inches. And yeah, but it's even by today's standards, it's probably just up to Canadian building code now.
Right.
Like Canadian building code is probably starting to suppress it with air tightness and everything. So.
Yeah. And so what we'll find out when I give you the radon meter, well, just what the radon level is in your, like normally you put it in the basement, but you don't have a basement. So you
have to put it somewhere where you live, right?
Somewhere where the humans are. And we'll find out if that crawl space is good for you in terms of the radon gas or perhaps bad for you.
The crawl space? Oh, I suspected it to be bad.
Yeah, because the radon comes up through the ground. So if there's no cement in there, that might be bad for you.
And even if there is cement, it can come up through cracks in the cement.
Yeah.
Which is inevitable and things like that. So what I would have to do, and this hasn't been done, I would have to put plastic down on the crawl space and tape it up, sort of like an air barrier.
Yeah.
And then, but before there, you have to put a layer of sand, which is almost impossible, and I don't know how I would ever do it.
Because there's not enough room there?
It's not enough room. How do you load sand into your laundry room, And then there's a hole in my laundry room floor. And
that goes down to the crawl space.
Yeah. And then the crawl space isn't that crawlable through the whole thing.
So
Plus, in my crawl space, there's all these weird things. That has something to do with the passive solar house, and I don't know what they are.
Oh, really? Like
there's these stacks of I don't know what size, maybe the size of 2 record LPs side by side, and they seem to have alcohol in them or a fluid in them, and I think they were some sort of heat storage.
Wow.
And I don't know what they are, and I don't want to go back down there because it's horrible. It's a horrible place to go.
Are they attached to anything? Like,
No, they were stacked there, but they could have been.
Maybe they were on the outside of the house at one point.
They could have been right in the furnace system as well. Like they could have been. The warm air could have blown through in the daytime, heated those up, and they would have retained heat. Nobody can tell me. The solar guy couldn't tell me. Nobody can tell me exactly what was going on.
Well, you'd probably have to talk to somebody who was involved in the original Saskatchewan conservation.
I was going to get. There was an old solar guy in Lumsden, north of here, that said he'd come by, but on his off season. But I think he's retired now, and I missed my opportunity.
Yeah.
So what else you got?
Well, onto a heavier topic, JP Morgan Chase, which is the oil industry's bank of choice, MarketWatch is reporting that they're starting to withdraw support for fossil fuels.
And I find it incredible that suddenly this is happening. People, people on YouTube were saying, get behind us and change your bank account to somebody who doesn't do that, which was easy for some people. It's hard for me because I've got a low interest rate that allows me to pretend that I'm in the middle class. And credit unions are more expensive here for mortgages.
And changing banks is a pain in the ass.
Oh, God, yes. God, yes. I hate my bank. I hate all banks. I'm not a bank fan.
Yeah.
Who is? Nobody is.
No, and there's not really enough choice. But
anyway. It really is the Canadian banks who are left to support the oil and gas industry.
And as far as we know, they still are.
As far as we know, they still are. And but there's this massive divestment. I mean, it's cascading. I didn't expect to see this to happen, but I would argue that climate events like Australia and activists like Greta Thunberg and other people actually have moved the needle more than they say. Nothing's happening, and I know that that's frustrating, but I think it's a slow progress to move such a large object, and I think the world is actually moving towards realizing that we don't want to do this anymore. We'll see what happens in America. That'll be interesting, but yeah, because they've been rolling back. Every day they roll back an environmental regulation.
Yeah, and obviously the oil and gas industry is going to fight back as much as possible and hang on to whatever they can. And they still have deep pockets. So,
but the oil sands, I read, you need like $65 a barrel, and some other people say 80, 85. I don't see it. I don't see it for the long term because you don't make a mine to last 1 year.
Yeah.
Like maybe oil and gas might, for whatever reason, a war, conflict, different things shoot up to $65 a barrel. It's not going to stay there for the rest of this decade as we do this show, though.
Yeah, so this is, here in Canada, we have a lot of oil sands, which is oil that's very difficult.
It's the most expensive oil.
It's the most expensive oil to extract, but people have been making a lot of money off of it for many years now.
Yeah.
But, the price of oil is not in a good place as far as that goes.
And the difference between oil and gas is it's a very monopolized, it's not widely democratized like, say, wind and solar. Well, I'm an energy producer. You're an energy producer because we have solar panels on our house.
Yeah.
And we're not exactly kingpins. But, the oil companies, they go to their Christmas parties in Banff and they have their prostitutes. I don't know if they have prostitutes. I assume they have prostitutes. That's just, I want to colorize, whatever's going on in Scorsese's eyes, what the Alberta oil and gas industry is. I do know that they make a lot of money. I have relatives who are making a lot of money, have made a lot of money doing mid-level jobs. It is a lucrative business with a lot of money flowing around. And that's going to change unless the oil and gas companies buy up all the wind and solar in the world, which it seems not impossible. But it's not going to be different. The energy industry is not going to have tycoons as, if you work in wind, you'll make maybe a good living, but you're not going to be decadent. You're not going to be driving a Porsche.
Did you ever see that movie with Mark Wahlberg? It was about the Gulf oil disaster.
Yes, I did.
What was that called?
Oh, I can't remember.
Oil blow up? Is that what it's called?
No, I don't think so.
Anyway, it was about
the working title.
The offshore oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico that went kablooey and spilled billions of...
Not that long ago, recent memory.
Not that long ago. But the thing that struck me about that movie, because they did a really good job of showing the machinery of these offshore oil rigs, these massive, insanely complicated and expensive machines that sit out in the middle of the ocean and just, they pump out money. And, but yeah, it was the complexity of that really struck me that, there's just so much money involved in oil that it's worth it to build these multi-billion-dollar oil platforms in the middle of the ocean that can go awry and blow up and everything. But, compare that to the simplicity of windmills or solar panels, it just seems insane.
It is insane.
Like you would never, if you were starting the energy industry now, you would just never do that.
No, you would never build a combustion engine because it would be far too complex.
Yeah.
That's what people don't get.
If you had to start now.
I mean, you look at a combustion engine, And they're the most complex machine in the world. There's I'm sure space shuttles that have less complexity than a combustion engine.
It's crazy.
Maybe not too much. But anyway, my point is, I don't really have a point.
Here's my point. I was watching YouTube the other day.
Okay.
And the ads come up.
Sure.
And there was an ad from Honda. And I couldn't save it, or I couldn't, the ads disappear. But I wrote it down and made a note. And they were just talking about how Honda SUVs produce 16% less carbon emissions than the average SUV. And this was their green pitch.
That's all they got.
That's all they got. I was a little bit...
Screw you, Honda. You're going down.
16% less carbon emissions. And I don't know.
Of all the incumbents that don't get it, Toyota and Honda are the most incumbent-y of the incumbents. And yeah.
Well, they've got these massive infrastructures that they have to, that are pointed in a certain direction.
They're making money off combustion engines.
And they still are.
And they still are, and they will for a while, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Things are going to change, and we're going to be there to talk about it.
For the next 10 years in this 10-year limited series.
Limited series, 10 years, yeah. The other thing that happened this week that I thought was interesting was Chevy debuting a vehicle in China that was $23,000 US after incentives, which is cheap. And people have been comparing it to the Bolt with a B, because the Bolt is kind of an ugly car. I don't find it that offensive, but it's not sexy. It's not that interesting. This has a more aggressive, sort of SUV-ish feel to it.
Yeah, I saw the picture. It looked good.
It's a higher profile, and they say it's 410 kilometers on the lousy rating. I forget, the one that's not realistic. So it's more like 300 and change or something. But for that money, and that's the low-end version, and they're saying, well, why aren't you making this everywhere?
Well, we're going to have constrained battery supplies for quite a few years now. There's been lots of announcements of battery factories because,
I read something where there was 103 mega factories announced or planned by 2030.
103.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And it was more than what Elon said that we would need. Maybe it was far beyond 100 because he said we needed 100.
Well, it's potentially the new gold rush. If this is going to replace the fossil fuel industry, then there should be lots of people rushing in to make money off of it.
Once investors see that there is a rush, then the investment pours in. I'm not a financial expert, but I see that that's very important. Investment is pouring out of oil and gas. If you don't see growth, if you're not confident in the growth, the long-term growth of oil and gas, you're not going to put money into it. And that's what's happening. It's not all ethical. Yeah. Some of it's ethical, but they're seeing the writing on the wall. The investors are. And, it's going to be a horrible transition here. And the sooner the pain gets over with, the better. So I'm actually glad the oil prices aren't high now.
Yeah.
And the whole economic situation with the virus going around is slowing oil consumption, especially in China. So that delays. There's no false hope. I don't want people to have false hope because I do have relatives in this industry, and I don't want them to suffer. But they're going to. And you have to realize what's going on here.
And I know we've talked about this before. I am an environmentalist, and, I want to make choices that are better for the environment. But like you, I'm also kind of a cheapskate, right? These are all economic kind of arguments. I've got solar panels on the roof, which, I love the idea of being efficient and producing my own energy. But it's also a win economically. In the long run, it's cheaper to do it that way. Just like in the long run,
it's better investment than probably most things you can invest in. The return on that investment, for every dollar you get in, you get 2 or 3 back, right?
So if we're relying on the capitalist system to help us out here, it probably will, because
capitalism will ultimately do it. Government policy speeds it along. The miracle that is Elon Musk I think he's already achieved his goal of advancing the electrification of transportation, making it faster than it's inevitably would have been. I think that's very clear now. And in fact, we don't need him anymore.
Yeah.
I think Tesla's running pretty well.
We do complain about the major car companies. They're not moving fast enough, but imagine how slow they'd be moving if there was no Tesla.
And when this Y hits...
The Model Y,
when the Model Y is around and it's maybe not the sexiest vehicle, but there's no complaints about it like the X. The doors are not weird. They're normal doors. It's got lots of cargo room. It's lightning fast.
Yeah.
And the top end versions are just ridiculous. I mean, to think that you can go buy a crossover EV, save a ton of money on gas, never go to a gas station, and drag anybody, including most high-end sports cars, just to have that feeling of sportiness. Like I'm not a man who sought out sportiness in my cars. I was never that pretentious. Like I thought, I just want a car that works. I've driven crap my whole life.
Yeah.
And EVs are fun as hell to drive. Let me tell you that.
Even your old Nissan
Even my
Leaf.
old Nissan Leaf, which is a fraction of what a new Nissan Leaf does, and a tiny fraction of what the worst Tesla can do.
No, I drove your Leaf one time, and I'm pretty sure that's the fastest car I've ever driven.
They're just fun.
Yeah.
It gives, and they're luxurious because it's so quiet and smooth. And no, this is what people who assume the electrification of transportation is not going to happen unless we have a gun to our head don't get, is that EVs are better on every way than gas cars. And when they are cheaper and it is economical, and companies like Amazon order 100,000, cities order buses, just the buses could tank the oil growth, I've read.
Yeah, once it makes economic sense for the average person, we're good.
Well, yeah, and it's game over. But we'll be here to cover it. Like I said, only to 2030, though.
I just can't commit beyond that.
I don't think we'll need to, because it'll be the story will be over, and our children can take over, or something like that. Our grandchildren.
Well, it'll be about something else, like cybernetics or something.
AI.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
We'll see you next week on the Clean Energy Show.